Hi, my name is Hannah. Welcome back to my channel, Savage Reads. I'm back at home this week. Had a really rough flight on the way home, lots of delays and cancellations, and took me ages to get home, but I'm back and I'm over jet lag, and I've read some interesting books this last week. I have gotten back into embroidery, which with traveling I put down for a couple weeks, but I'm starting a new project. I am not terribly excited about this project, but I think it's going to turn out cute. I just really need more inspiration. I want something really based on something beautiful in nature. Or a cool building or something. I want to be more inspired. And right now, I just am doing a project because my fingers need something to do. So where I am so far is just, I drew out a little curated bookshelf, filling that in. Is it the best thing ever? No, but it's gonna be fine. It'll be cute. So that's where I am right now. And hopefully I can find another project that I'm really excited to get to soon. I'm still having fun for now with the embroidery, so I will just enjoy that and see what happens, but I'll keep you updated on that. Now, quick little update on reading to my daughter. I did start trying to read Aragon out loud, and I can't do it. I got a chapter in and I'm like, ooh, this is gonna be a pain. So I just am gonna buy the series for her. She can read them all on her own, and we are starting to read Hatchet together. My thoughts on Aragon was, after the first couple chapters, I didn't find the writing to be super strong, and I didn't think I'd have the patience to deal with it, especially when it's a bit of a longer book. It had a lot of that clunky amateur writing, and I get that the author was very young when he wrote it, but just in the first couple chapters, some of the overdone and clunky descriptions just made the idea of reading it out loud painful. Do I think I could maybe read and enjoy it on my own in my head? Maybe, because I could enjoy it for nostalgic reasons, but I think reading it out loud would really start bothering me, so skipping that one altogether. Now, let's talk a little bit about what I have read the last week. What I read the last week was all nonfiction. Now, I love nonfiction. That is why I've been reading a lot of it, but just how things have turned out, I have been stuck with too much nonfiction lately. I think I need to break it up. I love nonfiction, but I think having some more fiction mixed in with it helps me appreciate the nonfiction more, helps me appreciate the fiction more, because sometimes if you're just reading nonfiction books, it can start feeling heavy, and if you break it up with something more character-driven and more open to interpretation, it can be really beautiful. So I need to break it up more. If you have a favorite fiction book that you read last year, let me know in the comments down below, because at what point do you feel like reading nonfiction has become too much? I feel like in years past, and this is just me making a wild conjecture because I don't know the exact numbers, but maybe a quarter of my reads were nonfiction. You know, every wrap up I'd have one nonfiction and then a few fiction books, and this wrap up is only nonfiction, and I went and looked at just the books that I have read this year, 2025, and I'm at over 60% nonfiction reads at this point. That is great, and in some ways was very intentional because I was trying to add more nonfiction to my list because I was so excited about it, but I'm also feeling like I gotta break this up a little bit more. Do you ever get burned out from reading too much of a certain genre or a certain type of book all at once? The nice thing is that nonfiction can cover so many different areas, and I love those kinds of books, but am I looking for maybe a little more escapism? Yes. So hopefully I can break things up moving forward, but this last week was all nonfiction, and all really good nonfiction. So the first book that I'm going to talk about was a recommendation from the amazing Audrey at Audrey Approved. If you aren't following her, what are you doing? She has such good recommendations. And I read the book Facing the Mountain, a true story of Japanese American heroes in World War II by Daniel James Brown. And this book was excellent. It was following different Japanese Americans in World War II, exactly as it says. and following the different history of internment camps, people who objected to the war, people who fought in the war, and following some of these individual stories of these Japanese Americans in this time period. And this is the same author who wrote The Boys in the Boat, so if you read that book and you liked that book, I think you would like this book. I thought it was really good. My only problem is that when did I read this? On my miserably long flight on the way home from the US. And so was my enjoyment a little bit lower than I would hope? Probably. That's another reason I need a fiction book, because when I'm on an airplane, I need more escapism than feeling kind of, all right, let me hear more about the war. When I'm already feeling a little down and overwhelmed, this book is definitely not one that would help that. But this book was really good. It did show a different perspective of World War II. I do recommend this. This was a good read. It's just time and place. I need to be careful about what books I am reading or listening to on airplanes, because I get kind of miserable on airplanes. This next book was a recommendation from the channel Triumphal Reads, so I will make sure to link that down below. And this is Says Who, A Kinder, Funner Usage Guide for Everyone Who Cares About Words by Anne Curzon. And this book was great. If you like linguistics and grammar and you feel passionately about that, this book is for you. I really loved the deep dive into some of the ways that we use language, why there are rules surrounding it, and how and why we can and should break them. I loved being able to look back at why certain grammar rules came to be standard and realizing it was kind of an arbitrary decision in a lot of these instances. And so if we are going to split an infinitive, put a preposition at the end of a sentence, or put random capitalization throughout our writing, that can be okay. You should understand why you're doing it. You should try to be consistent. You should try to be clear. But some of those grammar rules are not going to serve you in writing clearly and concisely. And so I really liked the book. It made me a little more hyper aware of the way that I use grammar, but also made me more forgiving of the times that I am not great with my grammar, both spoken and written. And so it was fun. If you want a nonfiction book that is not going to make you depressed, this book is fun and interesting. Now, if you really have never cared about any of this, maybe I could see it being a little boring, but overall, I had just a grand time with this book. I think this book has left me feeling a lot more interested and curious about why people use certain grammar decisions, and less judgmental, which I think everyone can use in a multitude of situations. So this was really good. I really enjoyed it. For a very heavy read, I had a comment recommending the book Still Life with Bones, Genocide, Forensics, and What Remains by Alexa Haggerty. And this book is part memoir, part history, part science, and you are getting a bit of an interesting tone. It's not just the facts. It is not just this nonfiction, here's what happened, but you are getting how the author interacts with the facts and how she views them. You are getting a bit more of a stylized prose. You're getting a little bit more of flowery descriptions of things, but I think that ended up working incredibly well in this instance, because she is dealing with such a difficult subject that affects people so deeply that being able to discuss it, not just lay out the facts, but try to process and analyze, I could see the need for the way that this book was approached. And so while sometimes that kind of thing would bother me, it really worked in this instance. The author is an anthropologist who works with forensic scientists and families to piece together what happened in these genocides in Guatemala and Argentina. And these horrible, horrible tales are really harrowing to read. And understanding what happened and how we uncover that and how families and communities heal and move on or don't. And what that means is really powerful and really an awful thing to go through. I think this book was very important, and the way that she approached it made you really feel it emotionally, which I think is important with this kind of subject, to understand these atrocities on a very human level and the effect it has on the victims and their families and the lasting repercussions it has for these entire communities and governments. And so I just think this was excellent. This is a 5-star book. Do I really want to revisit it? No, but I highly recommend it. It was a very, very well done book of a very incredibly difficult topic. For another book that dealt with a very difficult subject in a non-traditional sort of approach, we have Liliana's Invincible Summer, A Sister's Search for Justice by Cristina Rivera Garza. And this was a recommendation from Melinda at A Web of Stories. And I had put this on my to-be-read list so long ago, I had completely forgot anything that this book was about. When I finally got the hold from the library, I'm like, great, Liliana's Invincible Summer. This must be a fiction. I don't know why. Did not read the tagline until I started the book and realized, oh no, this isn't fiction. This is nonfiction, memoir, true crime. And I listened to this on audio, and I don't know if the audio was as successful as reading it would have been. I thought the actual performance was good, but this book jumps between different sources so frequently that I did find it hard to keep track of, and I wonder if reading a hard copy book would have helped me. That is my only little caveat to completely recommending this book, is that there were times when I'm like, who's saying this? Who's talking now? Who's that? And just getting a little confused about the people that were involved in what was happening. This is the author many years after her sister's death, trying to come to terms with what happened and piece together the narrative leading up to her sister's murder. And this book could have felt very true crime. Okay, we've got to figure out, solve who did it. But that wasn't the focus of the book. The book took all of these experiences the author had, but also experiences other people had, letters and notes and journals that her sister had kept, all of these different sources, and compiled them into a story of who her sister was. This is a beautiful reflection on the love that this author has for her sister, and really getting to know her sister and know the beauty of her life and know how frustrating it is to feel like justice hasn't been served. And at the time that violence against women was not well understood or recognized, and see her ex-boyfriend that was abusive and understand those warning signs, but also see the hope that Liliana had through all of this, seeing her letters, seeing her life, and seeing her commitment to finding good things in her life. I thought it was really a beautiful reflection. Yes, it was frustrating. Yes, they didn't find the guy, but it wasn't really focused on that. It was focused so much on her sister. And this is where I feel like books that deal with this kind of subject really should end up on. It should not be, oh, let's figure out who the murderer was and figure out his past. We don't care about that. We care about who these people were before their lives were so tragically cut short. And this painted a beautiful picture of her sister, and I think it was just really, really well done. So it has been kind of a heavy week of reading. I need some light and fun reads to mix in with things. I have this problem where I add books to my list all just in a row, and then I just kind of work my way through the list, which ends up kind of mixing itself up because I put some books on hold, I wait till books are available. But sometimes if I've added a lot of a certain genre to the list, I'm going to be stuck going down that list, and it will only be that list for so long. So I need to break this up a little, give myself a little bit of a break. These were some excellent stories, but especially those last two, very, very heavy. So if you have thoughts on these books or recommendations for something to brighten up my day, let me know in the comments down below, and I will see you all on the next one.